Fantastic. You know him from Blockers, from Neighbors, from Suicide Squad, from the Mindy Project, and from Mad TV. And now you know him from The Oath. Please welcome my good friend, Ike Barinholtz.
Cocktail. I don't want to throw it. How are you? Hey guys. We sharing a mic?
I guess so. Yep.
Fine.
All right. So
First
we're.
of all, can I just say I want to. You guys are the first real people to see this movie. And I'm overjoyed, and I cannot thank you all. Sorry. Y'all for coming out here. I love Austin. It's one of my favorite cities. My in-laws live here. Where's Matt and Co. Brinkman? I'll see you guys after the show. And that might have sounded like some kind of sketchy drug deal, but it's not. So, but thank you guys so much. That's all I wanted to say.
We're not opposed to sketchy drug deals, just not this one. So I'll start off with a couple questions, then we'll open up to everybody else. So Ike, you wrote, directed, and starred in this film. How did you manage to juggle those three hats while you were filming?
When I directed some episodes of the Mindy Project, and when you're directing a TV show, it's a little bit easier. You're not in every scene. You can kind of set up a shot, go, sit down, check Twitter, see what our president's tweeted. And then when you're acting, when you're just acting, that's the easiest thing in the world, right? That's like, action, say a couple lines, cut, I'll be in my trailer. What I learned was that you just can't sit. Don't sit, don't eat. I just kind of was all day from the first shot, just kind of nonstop moving around, walking around the set, and I found I just kind of used is that inertia? That's what inertia is, right?
Momentum.
Momentum. Thank you, sir. It's so embarrassing I said inertia. You guys remember when I said inertia and I said momentum? But yeah, and I luckily had such an amazing team, the QC guys who they did Get Out and Black Klansman, and then our amazing line producer, Kristen Murtha. I just had a lot of. It's like a jockstrap. It gives support. They were my jockstrap. Guys, they were my jockstrap. And I'm going to leave it at
that. What were your priorities when writing the film, and what were your priorities when casting the film?
I had this idea for this movie after a couple Novembers ago. I was at Thanksgiving dinner with my family, and after dinner, there was a little bit of bourbon going around. And my brother and my mom and I got this big argument, and it was crazy because we were all basically on the same side, right?
Your brother who plays your brother.
My brother who plays my brother. Wasn't he great? He's so funny, man. He was so funny. But we got in this big argument about, why this happened and this calamity, and it's your fault, and it's Bernie would have won, and this and all that shit. And I was like, man, if this is happening in our house, well, we're all pretty much on the same side. What's going on, around the country? And then I started talking to my friends who were going home, and some of my family, and I knew that I had this container, right? Thanksgiving week was going to be a good container. So the challenge was, we got another microphone. Look at that. Thank you, sir. So the challenge, I think, was to tell a story that was funny first and entertaining and had some emotion and some realness to it, and not kind of just turn into like a partisan hack job, like a liberal fantasy. And then casting it, I had a very good idea for some of the parts who I wanted. I knew I wrote the part for Tiffany Haddish. That's right. I saw her in this movie Keanu. It's a great movie, and I was like, she's great. I would love to be her husband someday.
But you were already married.
I'm already married happily, but you can do that sometimes if you're. She'll make a fine wife to me for 3 weeks. So I knew I had her in mind, and then the great John Cho. I knew I always had his face in mind for Peter. He's like everyone's favorite person. He's the nicest man, and so I really wanted that. I knew my brother was going to be my brother, and I really wanted Carrie Brownstein to play my sister. I've been a big fan of hers forever. So I had those kind of pieces in mind, so my objective was to cast them. And then I need a little bit of help, and specifically with the character of Mason, who is Billy Magnuson. Amazing, right? God damn, what an actor that guy is. And initially, when I wrote the movie, it was an older guy, like an older craggy guy, almost like Michael Rooker or something like that, you know. And then Charlottesville happened, and I was like, oh, I'm not scared of old white guys. I'm scared of fucking young white guys now. And so he was someone that we had early on in the process in mind, and he took to it. And then again with Nora Dunn and Chris Ellis and Meredith Hagner, those were kind of very early suggestions that we took. So I guess to answer your question, the challenge was to cast good people.
Yeah. Did you have any touchstones? Now that you're a filmmaker.
Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And you can call me from now and be like, hey, Ike, filmmaker, it's Dave. So if you could just use that.
Hey, I'm Ike, filmmaker. It's Dave.
Thank you, yeah.
Can I have a job?
Yes. We've known each other for 20 years, guys.
So as a filmmaker, what were your touchstones for this film, writing this film, directing this film? What other films were you thinking about, or?
Well, I knew that I wanted to do a movie set during the week of Thanksgiving, and then there was another element I knew I needed, and I love dystopia, which is good because we're fucking living in one now. But I love Children of Men. I love it. Everyone loves Children of Men. Great movie, perfect movie, and all those movies, I'm always interested with the genesis. How did it happen? And I don't mean necessarily in Children of Men. We know some biological incident, but the breakdown of society. Like, basically, how did the purge happen? Like, how did they decide we want to do a purge, right? So, so Children of Men was something that I kind of had in my mind. And then there's a really old movie called Mrs. Miniver, old movie from like 1946, which is this great William Wyler film. And I saw it when I was a kid, and I saw it again, and it really struck me. I was like, wow, it's kind of almost two movies, but it feels like one. The first kind of part of Mrs. Miniver is like life in a pastoral English town during the war. And then like the second half is like the Nazis in the house. And so that was another one. And then, I love 70s films. And I love MASH. I love the movie MASH. And I love them kind of antic, crazy feeling you get when you're watching. You feel like you're in a medical unit. And MASH also, I think, walks that line between some really sick and like sad and like really fun. There's a scene in MASH where Hot Lips is walking through the OR tent and she sees like two surgeons performing an operation and they're covered in blood. And she's like, how's it going over here? And one guy goes, are you kidding? And I just remember seeing that as a kid, like, oh wow, that's like a really gross, messed up situation, but they got a joke out of it. Good for them. So, I think those are kind of three movies I kind of had in the back of my mind.
Yeah, you rarely see films where the tone is just so intense, and it's a bit also with laughs, jokes coming nonstop like that, and you wrote that perfectly in this film. How do you write that? How do you direct that?
There's some movies that pull it off. I don't know if you guys saw Philomena, but I thought that movie did a great job. Where it's basically like Midnight Run, but with this crazy, horrible story about like nuns killing children and stuff. I think the trick to that is trying to play it as real as possible. And so our actors kind of knew that, playing things real, getting those real emotions out of you. Like, holy shit, this guy's fucking bleeding to death right here. Like, it's we know that's funny. And I think, I think, there was a couple jokes that I knew because we did a little real estate investment early on, setting them up. That like, I knew even in this very heightened time, there's a man with a gun and this, and the president stepping down, like the dad not being able to get the TV to work. Like I knew. And the only reason I knew that is because my dad has never once successfully turned on my television. Never once. So I think it's just kind of a combination of, setting yourself up so you have some of those moments that will be kind of a cathartic break, and then just having everyone play it real. I think you just kind of get those funny live moments.
Yeah, those speed bumps. Especially.
Yeah, so the speed bumps were, we added because we went to a location scout, and my locations manager was great. He was like, so this is our first one, and we'll see some other ones if you don't like this one. And we wrote it. There were these speed bumps throughout. And I went to him, it's pretty great. It looks great, but there's a lot of speed bumps. He goes, yeah. We don't have any other options. So this is the location. And so then I wrote in, I added that speed bump bit, just because it's all practical. That's not like someone shaking a car. Those are speed bumps in Simi Valley. So yeah.
That's fantastic. Does anybody have any questions from the audience that they would like to ask? Yes, ma'am.
Hi. I love your work.
Thank you.
We were talking about the writing, and you have, again, such great actors. Did you allow them to ad-lib any of their lines?
Did everybody in the back hear that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, great. That means the acoustics in here are like perfect. I'm an improviser, and I know my brother is, and John Cho and Carrie and Tiffany have that skill set. And I think the kind of best way to do that, in a comedy you can improvise a little bit more just because you're looking for those kind of madcap hijinks. But in this, we had a thing where we're like, look, let's nail the written word. Let's nail that a couple times in a row. And once we know that we have the shape of the scene, and as long as we're improvising not just in character but in context of the scene, which is very difficult as we know as improvisers, we opened it up. And there's a lot of moments in that movie. I wish I could take credit for calling someone a trash pussy. But that's just the great Tiffany Haddish in her happy place. In the zone, as we call it.
It was an amazing moment. Anyone else have a good question? Yes, in the back right there. Hi.
Great movie.
Thank you.
I was wondering, how do you be your own self-critic when you're directing, you're writing, you're acting? How do you check yourself as an actor and a writer when you're a director? How do you check yourself as a director when you're writing? How do you kind of manage that triangle?
That is to quote one of my not favorite Billy Joel songs, that's a matter of trust. Thank you. So a good friend will laugh at a medium joke.
Not a medium song.
Hey now. Surround yourself with people you trust. I had my longtime partner Dave Stass, and I've been with him for 30 years. I had him there. I had Sean McKittrick and Ray Mansfield there. I had Kristen Murtha there. I would go and confer with them. My first AD, Daniel, was crucial. But Seth Rogen gave me great advice. He said, smoke a lot of weed. He didn't say that's a joke. He told me a note that James Franco told him, which was, you think when you're acting in your movie, you're directing, you'll do the scene and you're like, got it, I got my coverage, moving on, but you don't have it because you're not as good as you think you are, because you're directing and you're outside your mind and you don't have 100% focus. So give yourself a couple extra takes, which was something I did. I kind of gave myself a little, I have a tendency to be like, I got it, we're perfect, move on, because that works on the Mindy Show or something. But for this, I had to give myself a little more room. But the answer is really just find, that feedback system who will tell you, hey, this scene's not working, and they'll be honest.
Yeah, right there in the back red shirt.
The resolution definitely seemed to draw from the idea of checks and balances, pulling it back from the abyss.
Amen.
Is that just your personal hope?
Yes. Yes.
Did you ever toy with a darker end?
We did. I love that question. There was a lot of talk of like, hey man, a lot of things were said, you have to kill someone. And it was very important to me that we have a somewhat optimistic ending to this, because I am optimistic for this country. And I even did the politician thing when I did that. So I'm being sincere. But we, in my mind, it was always kind of this, a bit of a deus ex machina of like, okay, it's over, but I do have a hope. And the message of the movie really is, let's try our hardest, our absolute hardest, to not let external forces affect our internal core. And there will be a president one day that's not named. And let's try to, do our best to keep our units together. With that said, if you have an uncle who loves Alex Jones, you can cut him loose. I'm giving you permission.
Yeah, right there.
Out of all the actors in the world,
In case you're in the back message, she wants to know why Seth Rogen, why he got disappeared.
Quite simply because he is my friend and I knew he would let us use his photo. I think initially it was Mark Ruffalo. And then they were like, here's the thing, if it's Ruffalo, you gotta write a letter, and this isn't fucking Rogan. He'll do it.
Why the long beard, Rogen?
That's how he is now. And I said to him, I go, I need a photo. And when you need a photo in a movie, if you want to pull like a photo from like the internet, like you go to like, Getty Images, it costs like $500. So I was like, Seth, can you take a photo of yourself that looks like a news photo? And he was like, oh yeah. And I gotta tell you, it took a lot of time. Like he would send me a couple, I was like, hey, this is so great, thank you. I need a different version of it. He's like, oh yeah. And like a week later, I'm like, hey, how are you, man? It's good to see you. What's going on? How's Preacher going? I need that fucking picture, bro. So it was a process, but I had a friend I could count on.
I think we have time for like one or two more questions.
Yeah, a couple more.
Anyone
Anyone
else?
else? Anything else?
Else in the back?
If not, we can just. Oh, I see you got it right there.
So what was the biggest mistake you made that turned out to be an opportunity?
Oh, gosh, the biggest mistake I made that turned out to be an opportunity. I made so many mistakes.
Pick one.
I'm trying to think of a mistake, but I'm trying to think of one that turned out good. It's a tough question. I can name a million mistakes. Can I name one that was really positive?
Yes.
Give me 1 second. Sure. A mistake in
Everybody make
film.
sure you tip your waitstaff.
Yes. While I'm thinking, give it up for the Alamo Draft House.
It's a Monday night. It's not a great service industry night, so this waitstaff's really counting on you to help pay the rent today. So throw a couple extra.
No pressure.
Okay, I got one. The scene kind of early on in the film with the great Max Greenfield. I should have covered it better, but I knew that I wanted a lot of it to play in that 50-50. And there was this whole talk of like, let's get some more angles. And I was like, no, I know exactly how I want it, but I should have been smart. I should have listened to my DP and done it. But I was like, no, I think it's going to be fine. And I think the scene turned out fine. He's so funny, very handsome.
What did your character do for a living?
They worked at this Bakery.
Oh, sure.
No, we actually talked about it one day, and they develop web content for companies. That's why we had on the backboard Stockholm with a question mark. I think every company has that. Stockholm?
So you're taking this to Dallas to
Tomorrow,
Houston.
Dallas, Houston, Atlanta. Then we're going to Chicago and DC. I don't want to make you guys jealous, but if this was the DC screening, Wolf fucking Blitzer would be here. Okay.
Said they got me.
What's that?
Said they got me.
Dave is the Wolf Blitzer of Austin, I think. Yeah, where we're taking around the country, and it's coming out October 19th in Texas. And the thing is, you've already seen it, so your mind is like, I don't need to go see it again, but I've already seen it. But the fun thing is seeing it again.
Or telling your friends that live in those cities to go see that
And the
movie.
thing is, we really do want, I don't necessarily take both sides, but I think I show both sides, and I really think, like, even my friends that I know are conservative, super, super conservative, are people need a little bit of catharsis. And I think this movie gives you, it makes you tense, but it gives you that release of like, oh, we can laugh at some of this craziness that's going on. So it's a perfect holiday film.
Last question right there.
Yeah, I was just going to ask who, and whether it's among your friends or your family, who are your conservative references to kind of check you on?
Well,
real quick from the back, she wanted to know what his conservative references were.
Well, I have a lot of family in South Central Ohio, and who I love very dearly. But I mean, also like, one of my best friends in the entire world. And when I mean best friends, I'm talking like one of the 5 best friends I have. And I know Mindy says best friend is it's a tier, but this is tier 1. And he worked for Trump. And I mean like, I don't mean like he was like, worked at Trump Tower. I mean, he like worked in the White House. So, which is so crazy. So I talked to them, and we did our best to try to show, hey, they make some like cogent points, and my character, who is I think the most liberal character in the movie, is a asshole and a very flawed man who's kind of, I think,
Insufferable?
Insufferable is a great word. So I really do think, and no, by no means is this a movie that's only for people on the left or center of left. I think, everyone short of thinking Hillary Clinton ran a sex dungeon. I think everyone from there on would like it. Those people, I don't know if they.
We can't hope.
We can hope. Yeah.
So after the whole Oath ride is over over the next
Yeah.
couple of months, what do you have planned next? What are you thinking about next?
Oath 2, Electric Boogaloo. Oath 2, still signing. I'm writing kind of a big old studio comedy right now, a two-hander, and then we're gonna do another movie like this that's gonna explore the dark world of social media, so kind of those two things, and then also being a husband and father.
Yeah, we try to squeeze that in.
Big present.
All right. Well, we'd like to thank Ike for coming to Austin.
Like, I cannot thank you all.
Thank you all
Thank you guys
for coming out.
so much. Really appreciate it.